Well, here we are. It's the holidays, and I got some questions for you. Have you been feeling overwhelmed, exhausted, stressed out, and like everyone's energy and their vibe is sticking in your field? Are you finding that the old school, as my acoustic phone falls down, are you finding that the same old family dynamics in your life are reactivating with the holidays and you're finding yourself in your old roles? It feels like you're back in your old triggering. It's almost like you're reanimating and reliving childhood again. Are you finding that to be the case in terms of what's going on in your life? What about, it's like someone just slipped you a little bit of a Shadow Dance Latte with a little sprinkle of cinnamon triggering, and you're like sipping it down. You're like, what the hell? Are you finding that, there's challenging people in your life and they're just coming at you full throttle and you're really losing your tolerance? It's like just too much energetic constipation, too much energy, too much going on. Do you find that you're hypersensitive and very moody and tired and fatigued and like you're processing everyone's feelings and it's like to the max beyond what maybe it normally is for you? Well, if you relate to any of those questions, if you felt like, yeah, I relate to at least two of those or all of them, I got you. I would have to say that you may just be a dimmed down holiday empath that needs their light boosted ASAP. And you got to get back to that bright status. If you've ever been there before, we're going to get to that, but we got to get you lit up again. And that's what I'm here for. This is about how to be empowered as an empathic person, as someone who is an empath or a highly sensitive person, or someone who considers themselves very psychic or intuitive, or just like a psychic sponge. You absorb people's vibes and without even trying. The holidays, for those of us that are like that, you can count me in that mix, are harsh. They can be really hard and it can just get away from you before you know it, with your to-do lists and with your gifts that you got to get and with everything else that's going on and the family stuff and all that. You find that there's just no room to breathe. It's like your psychic field is just cluttered and full of energetic debris, emotional debris. Well, you're in the right place, because this is my annual, I do this actually every year, Empath's Guide to Surviving the Holidays. So if you related to any of that stuff, stick around. I gotcha. Okay, so let's do this. It's the holidays. It's a very stressful time for most people. I don't think I've ever had a holiday in my adult life that hasn't been stressful. For me and my, let's say, business / school and all the stuff I get up to, I'm promoting things. I am, of course, tending to family stuff and getting gifts, shopping online. It's mostly what we tend to do now, shopping out in public. If you're back to that, there's just so much. And as empaths, as people that feel everything without even trying, this can just get away from you. And it's really when we do need to stick to our self-care more than ever. And actually, ironically and paradoxically, we need to slow down, because there's a certain speed that tends to come with the holidays, that in that speed, we drop our boundaries, we drop our self-care, we then lose our center. We lose our sense of keeping our psychic hygiene intact. We move out of our light hygiene into dark hygiene. So what I want to do in this very special social live is give you, for this year, and I think this changes every year, and I'm going to explain why in a minute, but I want to give you for this year a little bit of a guide as to how you can keep your light hygiene, keep yourself illumined, keep yourself light, on point. And what's the difference between that and dark hygiene? I mean, I think sometimes we're in this unconscious sort of pattern of psychic hygiene that gets us pretty psychically dirty. And if you are someone that relates to being very sensitive, hypersensitive, feeling other people's emotions, feeling the energy of a room, feeling the energy of a crowd, well, you're a highly sensitive person, also known as an empath, also known as possibly psychic or intuitive. We're going to get to some of that nuance in a minute here. But it's just really crucial that you have some sort of guide to get you through this period. And I'm going to give you that, but I'm also going to touch on stuff that's actually more about life patterns as well, because it's been my experience after doing thousands of readings on people that I would consider to be empathic at a high level, that there isn't a real grounded general way to understand how to manage your empathic system anyway. So throw the holidays on top of that. So what we're going to be exploring here is how to maintain your center, what psychic hygiene actually is, what it needs to be this year, and just in this new time we live in. We're going to look at how to also maintain that sense of value and center that you need to have for yourself during the, I call it O holidays, because it's, Ohado plus holidays, O holidays. So let's take a deeper look at this, and also from a lens that's about shadow dancing, archetypes, the patterns that we are matched with in terms of people. There's a lot that goes on in that arena when it comes to how we're able to hold our boundaries and stay lit up and stay in our power and center. And then we would just want to look at, just in the field of life right now, what are the patterns? What are the energies that are out there that I could guide you to identify and then put on some kind of empathic soul screen so that you maintain some sense of boundaried protection, and also so that you can actually enjoy the holidays. I mean, this is ideally supposed to be a season of light, a season of connection and love and gift giving and receiving and generosity, and as we may call the holiday spirit, and it can be that. But I'm saying, if you're feeling just like, okay, but I just feel heavy and thick, and like things are like there's lead in my psyche, well, there may be some energy that kind of acts that way in your psyche, just like lead, just anchoring you down. So one of the things that does come up during the holidays, I think for most people, is, like I said earlier, a sense of speed. So I want you to start a personal evaluation with your speed. How sped up are you right now? What do I mean by that? I mean, are you maintaining a sense of everyday checking in and slowing down and taking a few deep breaths and then just sensing your field, getting a sense of what happened that day, how you're feeling about it, your emotional system, what's going on there? I mean, are you checking in? And usually we're not really checking in. We're trying to check off our to-do lists, right? And get all these things done. And it's interesting, as we are headed into this particular holiday season, and we're just days away, from the celebration of Christmas, if you celebrate that, we are also simultaneously in a Mercury retrograde in Capricorn shadow zone setup phase. So there is already, I can feel it. It was happening to me around me today. My acoustic foam just falls down out of nowhere. This kind of stuff where it's just like little annoyances, little things that just start to kind of mess you up and kind of make things feel like you're running against the wind, or it's twice as hard to get anything done, or it's twice as hard to focus. Well, this particular holiday season, we've got a whole setup going on that's going to put us in reverse. Stand us still and then put us in reverse in the Capricorn area of our life. Now, I'm not here to go into what that particular cycle is. I actually just did that inside my Inner Circle membership. So if you want to join that, go on with your best self and get informed. But I can touch on, if you're feeling like the energetics of right now are feeling like static electricity, you just feel like you're getting kind of pressured back. Well, you're not making it up. There's, in the psychic field overall, an energetic that is Mercury retrograde setting up and pushing you back and saying, look, you need to pause out for a while. and reevaluate your life in some particular ways. Now, I'm going to guide you through the empath lane here of what that reevaluation could be for you. And I would say maybe should be for you. But just know that right now the psychic field is going through some change of the wind. So how do we work with that? Just starting with that as the first thing to consider. Well, we're back to speed. Are you slowing down? This is meant to slow you down. If you can actually slow yourself down and kind of become more open to sensing, feeling, dialoguing with your own interior, then that's going to go a long way. And when we think it's optional during this sort of these energetics to slow down or not, well, that's when we tend to get acoustic foam falling off your wall. I mean, whatever it is for you. So the signs of frustration you might be feeling might just be that message, hey, slow down. It's time to just go in. During a time where we're kind of expected to be out there with family, doing this, doing that. And I got a solution for that coming up. But first things first, slow down. So one of the best ways to manage your empathic system during this season of overwhelm is slow down. And most notably because we're in a cycle, an archetypal astrological cycle that's already telling us that. So take a minute with that. I want you to be writing this stuff down. First thing, slow down, because you're going to reference that again and again and again. I need to slow down. I need to check in. Think of slow motion. How much more you can see in slow motion that you can't see in normal speed or hyperspeed. And our systems, our intuition, what we perceive, sense, and kind of acknowledge in our own interior is the same way. The slower we can kind of get ourselves to kind of boot down, the more we'll see. And then what does that give us? Information. And what does information give us? Well, guidance and choice. So if you get guidance that says, look, slow down. And then as you slow down, you see, oh, wow, I'm kind of running around here in an old role from childhood, boundaryless. And now, I'm back in family dynamics that I know don't serve me and that loop me around and disempower me and control me in some way. I get into triggering and reaction. I'm outside of conscious choice now, and I'm just on autopilot. You're right, you are. How do we get you back to, the driver's seat? Slow down. First step, you got to slow down, because that's going to give you the information of the next power move, the next pivot, the next self-care that you need to engage. So I'm going to give you lots of other pieces here, but it won't matter if you're sped up. If you don't really take the time to implement some of what I'm going to say and sense and read yourself through it, well, you're going to kind of skip over, and then you're just going to continue on until this happens, right? Until you might catch a virus, get sick, something faded comes into your system and says, okay, you wouldn't consciously do this, so here you go. How about a little COVID-19 or flu or whatever, whatever works. So keep that in mind. Now, speaking of which, I think it is important to realize that during the holiday season as empaths, we tend to be far more privy to just wearing our systems down, most notably our immune systems down, and then catching a cold or a virus and getting sick. So it's really important to slow down and nourish just your physical body and be very mindful of where you are losing energy, draining power. There's probably nothing more gutting or draining than getting triggered back into old family dynamics and then feeling powerless in the role you just revert back to that might have been something that you used to survive childhood. So you do want to look at this deeper place of, okay, if I slow down and do this archetypal inventory of myself, how am I moving right now? What's doing the choosing for me? What's setting boundaries or not for me? Where am I at with my choice and my action and intentionality in myself right now? What's running that? What's running my mind? And in that question, I would point you to an archetype or archetypes. So one of the archetypes, personally for me, that always comes on during the holidays, that's why I find it hilarious that that acoustic foam just fell. You probably didn't even hear it, is my perfectionist. So I've got to get it done. It's got to be done on time. It's got to be perfect. It's got to be this. It's got to be that. I got to wrap that present. I got to get this in the mail. I got to send this to someone, sound familiar to you? I got to blah, 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 set my New Year's resolutions, blah, 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 and then before you know it, you're sped up. And I'd look at you and go, oh, your perfectionist is running your mind. How's that feeling? Crappy? Yeah, I get you. It's not very fun. So shifting back to, okay, not really useful. Now, I'm going to give you a little formula. I'm going to drop it now. Why not? To kind of ward off, neutralize the perfectionist a little bit. Try it out. It's worked for me many years. And I call this the 75% formula. And what this means is you stop and you give yourself permission to just do 75%. Not 100%, not 150%, just 75%. So every day from now until the new year, you're going to, and take it beyond there if you feel so inclined, but you're going to be like, you know what? I'm just going to do 75% today. Think of what the 100% is, look at your to-do list, and cut off 25% of it. And that's all you're doing. And then just go, I'm giving myself permission just to do 75. And what I found this does is it allows me space to breathe. And often, and I don't want you to make this the goal because then you're back to 100%, but often you end up doing even more than 75, but you do it without the inner friction of the perfectionist running it. You do it from ease. You do it from, okay, well, I got to 75. I think I could still knock off a couple more things on this to-do list or a couple more things here and there. Great. But the point being, look, you do want to look at your system and understand through a bit of a shadow inventory what is running choice, perception, and my intentionality right now. Am I even in conscious intention, or am I just on autopilot with old systems, old patterns in me that manage pressure, stress, and what it's like to have other people's feelings all up in me? So part 2 here, it's not just your own personal emotional system that you might be managing. If you are someone who's highly sensitive or empathic, it's very likely you have the emotional processes and energies of others in your system right now as well. Now, I want you to think about what in you manages the emotions of other people. For most people, it's their addict. Or I could also say codependent. So the codependent goes out there. I call this the shadow victimized codependent empath. Goes out into, family, the world, and tries to manage everybody's emotional system so they can stop feeling crazy because they're feeling the crazy of everyone else. And there's this out of your own boundary, circuitous way to get back to your own peace, your own calm, your own center. And it doesn't work. In fact, because you're leaving yourself to go manage other people and their emotional systems, because why? Well, their emotional systems are basically yours because their emotional systems are sitting right in your field. You go out there and you leave you behind. So you've already left your center. Note that. You've already actually transgressed your own personal sense of boundary to go out and manage other people. Note that. And then it's all this effort to get back to self and have everyone be calm and the life in the world be calm so you can be calm because you feel the environment so deeply in your own system. You feel others so deeply in your own system. So you want to read yourself here and go, okay, where am I? When do I leave myself? Am I doing that now? And I go out and I manage all these people and everything out there just so I can possibly get back to some, self-cared centeredness, but it's not ever going to be found in this loop. And it is a loop. It becomes a loop. And then check it out. You leave yourself, just a little note here about the inner child in you. As soon as you leave yourself, your inner child's freaking out. And then your inner child's going, okay, what helped me get through childhood, through the traumas and challenges and fears I went through. And then whatever you adapted to get through childhood, it's back online. And we can call this an archetype. So adult child, overgiver, people pleaser, perfectionist. Go into yourself. What's managing you when you leave you to go manage everyone else? And now we've got a whole looping system here. And it is not sustainable. It will crash you out. Usually, I've seen most often, it'll take you to a depressed state, a drained, almost collapsed state in oneself, fatigued. And then after that, the immune system weakens and then we get sick. So here's where you want to start to look as well. And what has the capacity, now let's bring in triggering, to trigger you to leave yourself, and why? And now we're in shadow dancing, we're in family dynamics, we're in being matched to someone else in a way through magnetics that they trigger a response out of you to leave yourself, to give them energy, manage their emotional system, take care of their business or adulting, whatever it is, all in this unconscious agreement that if you do this for me, I won't abandon you. I'll like you maybe. But there's never, to be clear here, a sense of reciprocity or equality in giving and receiving to be found in this. That's not how this system works. So you'd want to look at how have I been triggered lately to leave myself? Who triggered me? Now, don't personalize it as much as you can to, it was my spouse, it was my parent, it was my friend, it was whoever it is or whatever it is. Get symbolic. Get symbolic. Go, okay, what about this person is it that triggers me to leave me? And what we're after here, my dear empath, is we're after how you don't have boundaries from ground zero to begin with. Why don't you have boundaries to begin with? And now we're in a holiday cycle in which all of this goes to the next level. I mean, this is possibly kind of like your life story in terms of some of your patterning. I get it. But man, when it's the holidays, it's like, that just went from 5 to 10 or from 7 to 15. Let's just go above 10. I mean, and this is where you want to go, okay. And this is the beauty perhaps of some of these situations and just feeling everything kind of overwhelming you, is you get a chance to really see with stark clarity what your system does. Now, all of our systems tend to relapse back to what we know, and that's usually from childhood, as a way to manage our safety, security, esteem, and survival, and fears of abandonment. As an empath, I'm going to say also manage our empathic system. The first things I named is just basic human survival psychology, but then we're going to go now into a multisensory psychology, and I'm going to have to talk about your empathic system and its needs for management just as much as your 5 sensory survival-based human psychological needs for management. And now we're at a whole nother level of conversation. So feel what I'm saying in yourself. See if you can't identify 1 or 2 people or situations where recently or currently if you're honest, you left your own boundary of self. You went out to manage out here. And in doing so, who was taking care of you? Who was parenting your inner child? Who was attending to your own needs? Now, that's just your inner child. Now, let me go to your inner multisensory child, who's managing the bandwidth of that child. and how it takes energy in from the environment because it's wired for it. Now, I'm going to drop a little insight here that comes from deeper levels of the work I've taught in recent years, and that's this. When it comes to being empathic, there's been a lot of conversation about just naming this almost pattern of our hyperempathy or hypersensitivity. And I've done a lot of that already. You feel other people's emotions. You feel the environment easily. You'll feel the crowd. You'll feel someone else's inner process. And that's sort of the obvious, in a sense, look at what your system tends to do. Yet there's a more esoteric and in fact, perhaps more powerfully important piece to bring in. And it's something I saw in readings with clients, and that's this. Those of us who are empathic, empaths, highly sensitive, HSPs, intuitives, psychic, those of us that, let me just say, have energy senses that feel the energetics of things, the emotional energetics of things, that particular wiring, where does it come from? Because we don't talk about that typically. We talk all about, the wirings experience. So I experience being highly sensitive or empathic and taking on energies and people and, just feeling a field or feeling all these things that are in the air, in the atmosphere, in the psychic field. Okay. And why exactly do you do that and someone else doesn't? Well, what I discovered is that that question is answered really at the level of the soul. And I call those that feel that way, have that kind of bandwidth, empathic souls. And in the empathic soul contract, you have archetypes as part of the actual fate to destiny journey that govern the contract itself. Some of them I've already named as archetypes of fate in that contract. So I want to bring in a little insight as well to that level of what you're going through during the holidays, because it could be considered a very rich time to get to know your system, as I'm offering in just what I said, from a completely different point of view. And now I'll issue the challenge to what is more common in, empath circles, and that is to consider our high sensitivity more of a curse or something that wounds or victimizes us. And there really is, in the first, kind of growing through human psychology with the ways that we as souls have to adapt to a 5-sensory model of psychology, there is a bit of feeling like, where's my power? I am victimized, Robert, by, the crazy energy in the atmosphere, the ups and downs, and all the stuff that's out there. I don't know how to center in myself, boundary up in any other way than to maybe just not go out into the world and, go into a hermitage in my home or myself and put up, burn sage and all this other stuff. How else do I manage this? It's a great question. Well, let me first offer how not to manage it. And it's something you do want to watch right now during the holidays. I would not recommend using your victim archetype to manage any of this. Feeling like you are a victimized empath is not empowering, or framing your hypersensitivity from a point of view of being victimized by it doesn't bring power to your system. It doesn't guide you to a way to really create robust energetic boundaries so that you can move in the world as the light worker empaths are born to be. we're not doing light work if we're identifying as victims in terms of that's who we are. Have we all maybe are we experiencing maybe right now during the holidays, a sense of overwhelm and victimization, perhaps from just the cacophony of all the energetics right now that are, right into our empathic system? Sure. Absolutely. You can name, this is not fun. This feels victimizing. And what I mean by victimizing, it feels violating. It's just, I cannot get my field clear. Okay, that's a real read on oneself. I'm just going to caution the making being an empath identity at all anyways. It's you're naming what you're doing in claiming that I'm a highly sensitive person, I'm an intuitive, I'm psychic, I'm an empath. What you're claiming and sort of identifying really is your system, just what your particular system does. And not everyone's system's like this. You probably have friends, family, people that barely feel anything, so, and yet here you are. Don't you feel, I mean, my God, I'm feeling, didn't you feel the energy in that room? They're like, what? Didn't you feel the energy? It was a funky vibe. Who? But you feel that, and that's real. But your empathic configuration, your empathy, your psychic openness is meant to be your power, not your curse, not your hobbled kind of sense of self. I can't be in the world like others can. There may be some truth to that. You've got to manage your system in a unique way. But you came through your soul agreements to be here in this world for multiple reasons. So we have to move past the narratives that have proliferated in empathic circles that position us as empaths as if we're victimized, we're just too sensitive to live this life. No, you're not. What is more true is you just maybe don't have a multisensory psychology and multidimensional psychology that would help you understand how to actually manage your system with power, with light. Now, that said, I'm going to bring in the sponsor for the social live, and then we got a lot more to talk about. So I created 2 masterclasses around everything I just said for people who are highly empathic. And this was something I did right actually as COVID-19 was hitting the world. The first one was called The Empathic Soul and Love Rebel. And this is Masterclass 1.0. Now, what this is and why do you need a love rebel? I noticed in people that are empaths that they needed an archetypal companion of destiny to manage themselves. And the one that was consistent in everyone's soul agreement, without exception, was the love rebel. And the love rebel is a force in oneself, and this is something to practice during the holiday, that allows you to mystically land in your center. And when you mystically land in yourself, you're going to land in something that's bigger than just the human heart. We got to love our human hearts. They're beautiful, but they also are prone to shadow emotional territory, like jealousy, vengeance, seeing through the victim consciousness. So we got to go to the cosmic heart, the mystical heart here. And in the mystical heart, it's a very holistic, if not the most holistic way to see oneself and life and other people. You see the holism of you see the holism of others, you see the holism of everything, and everything's okay. This isn't a place where we better or best anything. We look at things as karmic technicians, as energetic technicians, as empathic technicians, but we don't judge from a place of good, bad. We judge, hey, That drains power. That brings power. That is more holistic. That is polarized. You see what I'm saying? Here in the cosmic heart. Now, the mystical love rebel, it's mystical, has a capacity to set a boundary with somebody by saying, listen, I love you, and you're my father. But here's the thing. We have a legacy and ancestry of deep wounding in the family history that we share. And out of that, each of us has adapted certain patterns that are very sabotaging, that are not patterns of holism. They're not about us living as whole, functioning, loving creatures. So I can't shadow dance with you anymore this way. I do love you, but here is my love rebel boundary. I've got to rebel against the family system, our family legacy. And maybe this might be just as an example. I don't come home for Christmas. I wish you all the best. I love all of you. But I'm not yet in a place where I can stay centered and not triggered back into the roles I played as a child. So I'm not strong enough to be in the field of the family yet. So I'm going to make this radical love rebel choice not to go home for Christmas. That's the love rebel pivot. And then you might hear another voice, well, you should, it's your family. You should. And okay, I hear you, but I know what's true for me right now. Maybe next year I'll feel differently. Maybe next year I'll be in a different place in my power and my empathic system. Maybe I don't know. But what's true for now, what keeps my inner child feeling like I'm actually here for it, is to set a boundary. And this tells my inner child, hey, I got you. This tells my own interior sense of what my needs are. I got you. And that's powerful. Great. Now, I want to contrast this with something. First, little disclaimer. I'm a huge fan of crystals, sage, salt baths, flower essences, essential oils, candles, all sorts of stuff, energetic tools. I love all of them, but none of them will, let's say, boundary you up and clear you like getting a handle on an archetype in you that does not know how to hold boundaries. So if you've got a blood donor and your life seems to be matched then with vampires, there's not enough sage in the world for that. You're going to need to do inner shifting here. And during the holidays is when we usually get a really good chance to see, hey, this is what really runs my boundaries, because it gets so extreme and we're so drained, whether it is your perfectionist, whether it is an overgiver, whatever it is, you start to realize, oh my gosh, you're always kind of here. You're just usually level 5, but man, it's the holidays. You're level 10. I see you so well now. Now, in my empathic soul love rebel work, there are many other archetypes in the soul agreement of an empathic soul. And so what I decided to do this year, for the first time actually ever, because I know this work is so needed and powerful, is I have another masterclass called the Empathic Soul 2.0 that I taught after 1.0. Both are like very deep, together it's 18 deep lessons, 40-hour journey into a whole entire new psychology, a whole new way to look at your archetypes, a whole way to understand yourself as an empathic soul. And this year, I wanted to give everyone a chance to do both because I only open this once a year. So last thing here is as sponsor of this social life, I have the Empathic Soul and Love Rebel 1.0 plus 2.0 masterclass bundle this year. There's a link for it in the video description. And what that is it's you being able to take both for the price of one. So if what I'm saying intrigues you, if you feel like I want to know more about the archetype level of this, the deeper multi-dimensional, multi-psychological tectonics Go check out and read that. Just go read it. You could also then, you can tab to 1.0 and read. You got to take 1.0 first. You cannot take 2.0 without 1.0. You will be so lost. And we've set it up to where they drip out in sequence all the way. Literally, you have lessons until July. And in 2.0, I talk a lot about light practices, the need for light. So how do you then, during the holidays, stay lit up? Well, first you got to assess what's your baseline of luminosity. Like, are you some shining, star level of light, or I feel a little demojado most of the time, but the holidays get me down to like barely shining, barely lit up. Okay. That's something to kind of know about yourself. Like how shiny are you? How lit up are you generally? How illumined would you say you are? And this is something you have to feel out, because you might go, well, I don't really know. All I know is my baseline of luminosity. Yeah, okay. But then I could say, all right, let's throw some metrics in here. Do you feel that your empathic system is really healthy, and you can differentiate your emotions from others? You can sense when someone's making a move, a shadow dance move on you to try to, get into your boundary field and violate more boundaries or get energy from you. Can you immediately, do you have a flag that goes up, and do you honor its guidance? Do you seem to have in your life a lot of light dimmers? Whenever you might start to shine, somehow they find a way to just dim you down a couple lumens. Well, okay, this is the real deal. This is where we really get to business. Okay, well, now we got to talk about, why do you have light dimmers in your life? There's a match there somehow. And where we can begin to assess our light dimmers is, once again, let's revisit triggering. What is triggering? It's when you're in a situation where you feel your emotional system begin to react. And that is then you feeling something very strongly, whether that's fear, whether that's anxiety, whether that's a sense of urgency, a sense of hopelessness. Whether it's joy, you can be triggered into positive things too. Joy, happy, contentment. But let's stay on the shadow side for now, because this is kind of where we're doing the work in this social life. So when you get triggered, it's a signal that there's something in your holism that's not in alignment to your own worth, your truth, and needs a shift. Now, this is also going to be in the territory of what I would call traumatic triggering, when we get triggered by something that we're triggered by it because it reminds us of a historical violation or trauma we went through. And then I'd say, okay, when you get triggered with that emotion or energy, what in you comes online to manage that? Once again, it's usually something that managed it when you were a child. A lot of times these things that we've used as sort of our safety, security, esteem technology have now become identity for us. So close to who we think we are that we don't even see them for what they are, which are adapted responses, adapted archetypes and reactions. And my dear empaths, these tend to not have boundaries. A lot of these adaptations, they tend not to have boundaries. So when we don't have boundaries, what happens? Well, anything can come in. Now, you want to watch your triggering during the holidays because, and I always say this about triggering, all triggering gives us an opportunity to heal, to see ourselves. Triggering sucks. I mean, I am not trying to do a Pollyanna on it and make it fun, because it is not usually never fun, but it is really useful. And our first tendency is to make the person who triggered us wrong. And that's okay. But I'm going to say, all right, take a pause after that. And now let's get symbolic about that person, because your power isn't in making them wrong or trying to change them. You have no power there. To think you have power there, you just left your own boundary to go manage them. And now who's taking care of your inner child again? Where are your boundaries? You don't have any, or very little. So you can make them wrong, but it's not real useful long term. And you can certainly begin a dialogue around shifting a pattern with somebody and setting a boundary with them. Let's listen. If you keep, playing this role to me, then I can't be in your life. And I'd like to be in your life. If that's true for you, you could say that. But you can't keep playing this role to me, because I realize now it brings out this inner child, this traumatized inner child in me. And, I've got to take care of that inner child. I've got to start making different choices about who's in my life and in what capacity they're in my life. Now, conversely, you could have that dialogue with yourself inside and not even talk to that person and decide, this triggering was a great opportunity to see where I need to self-parent better, or maybe for the first time ever, where I do need to set boundaries, where I am in my empathic system so used to processing things for other people as a scapegoat, as an emotional surrogate, that I don't need, what's it like to just have my own emotional system and that's all I'm dealing with? I have no idea. That may be very true. So the holidays give us a really good opportunity to look at some of this deeper territory if we're so inclined. Once again, can't do it if you're sped up. And a lot of it you may need to look at after the holidays are over, because we may have truths like we've got things that we're expected to do, responsibilities to people, jobs, etc., that we've got to push through and accomplish. Yeah. But this year, I'm saying when you get to 2023 and we're in a retrograde full on by that time, I want you to stop and go, okay, I now am going to make that time to do this inner work, whether that's through my master classes or through just feeling things, whatever. But this is an opportunity to kind of start reading yourself, because you're like a live wire. There's things triggering and going like this, and you get this chance to go, okay, I get to actually see this in real time. So even if you're like, I hear you, Hado, slow down. Can't quite do that right now. Okay. But my spirit's going to talk to you January 1st. Now, so let's get some practical feet on the ground here and talk about how to handle some situations. That's deep, almost shamanic work, if you will, I've offered out of the gate. But then there is just more, okay, great, Robert, checking out your masterclass, but let's also look at what can I just do that would help in real-time family situations, friend situations, where I am this, dimmed down holiday empath, taking everything on. All right. In addition to slowing down, I'm going to say you do want to then notice and name the roles you're in right now. So are you overgiving? All right, overgiver. Are you being perfectionist? Okay, perfectionist. Are you being some sort of rescuer? Are you what are your roles? Identify them. And just that's step one. All right, these are the active roles in me right now. Activated, I will say, archetypes in me right now. Great. Now, let's say you're going home for the holidays, if you can, with the weather we're having in the United States of America. And it's going to be an empathic shit show. And you're like, oh God, how am I going to get through this time? I'm going to give you some strategies that can really ventilate some of that empathic overwhelm. One, if you find that you're in a dynamic conversation, argument with somebody during the holidays that's kind of about recycling into old roles, and you kind of trying to fight to break that mold and get out of that role, but that person wants to keep you in it. Those sorts of conversations, or just any triggered conversation or situation. I want you to do this. Get out of there. I want you to hear me in your head saying, listen, now's the time where you need to actually just leave this space. I'm not saying you have to drive back home, but that might be something you want to consider. But get out of that room, go for a walk outside. You are not obligated to sit there and spin in shadow dancing. That will go nowhere. How do you know it'll go nowhere? Because you've been here before. Rather, maybe look at the other person and say, listen, I appreciate your point of view. I'm going to go take a walk. And don't say it in a facetious shadow dance, I'm going to jab you kind of way. Get into, just for a minute, your either adult archetype or your mystic and say, listen, or your love rebel and say, listen, I just don't think this will be useful to continue to talk in these ways we're speaking. So why don't we stop and take a break? And if you feel so inclined, you could add this. I love you, but I'm just going to go for a walk. I'll talk to you later. Do it. Now, if you find yourself going, no, I'm not going to do that. This is how I got to set a boundary, blah, 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 blah. I'm telling you, you're not setting anything. You're not setting a boundary. In fact, you staying in it is part of the system. You walking out might be the first step out. So thinking to stay in it, you got to speak your truth and set your boundary. If you're speaking your truth to someone who's in an archetype match with you and it's a shadow dance, you're not speaking truth to anything. They don't hear you. The archetype in them, I want you to ask yourself, is that archetype actually going to hear? Let's say it's the archetype of the taker in them or their narcissist. Do you think they hear you? Really? You think you're speaking your truth and setting your boundary down and woohoo? No, you're not. You are just playing the role. And now there's a debate as to whether or not you can leave that role. That is all you're doing. A narcissist doesn't hear you. A taker, an active shadow taker in someone doesn't hear you. An active addict in someone doesn't hear you. So ask yourself, read it. Can the archetype active, the role that person's in, actually hear anything out of my mouth right now? And I'm going to bet no. And then you're going to hear me say, listen, this is why you need to leave. There's nothing useful next. Just more blah, blah, blah. And more attempts for this person to keep you in the same role because it serves them somehow. And by the way, the longer you stay, the more violated you are, the more boundaryless you become because you're not listening to your own wisdom and your own read on what's going on. If you find you can't leave because you got to get even or throw the next punch, okay. There's karma for that. It's called staying where you are in the same role with that person. That's what it is. You got to do the radical thing, the love rebel thing. Hey, I'm just going to go for a walk and not talk to you anymore. And actually just truly, if I can, find a way to lovingly tell you that in a neutrally loving way without the next punch, without the next comeback. All right, so there's that. Now, additionally, let's say there's a situation that you're very much looking at right now, and you're very much realizing, I think if I go to see my family, if I go do this, if I go do that, I won't hold my center. I'll lose myself. I always do. If you were honest enough to say, I don't have the empowerment to go back into that holiday family dynamic or whatever it is, I'm going to tell you don't go. I'm going to say, listen, you have permission not to actually go. And that's maybe the best move out of the pattern. There's no spiritual perfectionism here that you should just go and be empowered and go, and I'm not going to tell you to go there and get triggered into a shadow dance that you can't get out of if you know you can't get out of it. No. So you have permission to go, you know what? I'm not empowered enough for that. And that's just fine. Maybe I'll never be. I had a workshop once with a student when I was teaching in Boulder, Colorado, and the student asked a question about her mother and how to handle her because she would lose her boundaries and power around her all the time. And she's like, I've never been able to get this centeredness with my mom, and I don't know how to do that, Robert. And I said, well, could it be okay if you never knew how? Could it be okay if you could never be in her presence without losing your center? Because that may just be the reality of your system this lifetime. Is that okay with you? Similarly, I had another student, same sort of situation with a mother, and she was trying to get guidance on whether she should go see her mother. And I said, well, is it okay if you don't go? And she said, well, I'm really getting healthy. I'm doing all this inner work. And now I'm realizing how toxic my mother is for me. And I don't know. I mean, shouldn't I be empowered enough to go and be in her presence? And I said, no, there's no should, unless you're a perfectionist. There's just what's true. And right now, let's look at it this way. You just broke your arm. So you can't do anything with that broken arm. It needs a cast. It needs scaffolding for the bone to grow back and fuse together. You need scaffolding for a while before you're strong enough like that bone to be in the presence of your mom. And so give yourself that time without apology. And maybe someday that cast will come off and you can go and engage from a place of love and power. And it's not about your mom changing at all. It's, folks, never, ever make it about the other person changing. You just left your boundary. Whether they change or not is never in your power. Next tip, you have to know your power and powerlessness balance as an empath. You're going to feel so much that you need to know where you have power to bring grace and transformation and where you don't. And you're going to have a very confused sorting process here, because what's sorted this for you previously is likely those adapted archetypes from your childhood. So when you grow into being an intuitive adult with mystical forces now online in your multidimensional, multisensory psyche, now we got other options and ways to sort power and powerlessness. But if you make any of your moves about the other person changing, you've already left your power. And I think we've been through this before. Guess what? You left your child. You left your inner child behind. You left your boundaries wide open. So it's going to take a little adjustment to go, okay, oh, whoa. And now the read is this. The holiday read is, hey, am I predicating my next move with family, with a situation, based on them changing? If I am, I'm not in my power. How am I going to change? How can I change? What's in my capability and capacity to change? And get bottom line honest about that. There's some things about ourselves we may never change. And can that be okay? Does that make you less than? No, you have soul esteem, baby. You're worth all of that and a Frito-Lay. Come on. And nothing takes that away from you ever. On a mystical level, this is the truth. You are enough no matter what. No matter what you do, don't do. No matter what you transform, don't transform. This isn't about life is not about getting to enough. It's about revealing how we always were enough. Layer after layer. And part of that as empaths is to go, I was always enough. I did not have a skill set at 5 years old or a psychic, a psychological way to understand my own energetic boundary, my auric boundaries in other people, because no one ever taught, no one spoke multisensory energetics to me. How was I supposed to know that? And then I mistook other people's vibes as my own. So their low esteem became mine, their depression became mine, their anger became mine, their fear became mine, or I became fearful because of the feelings I felt in them. I felt unsafe the whole time I was a child because I could feel everybody's on edge emotional systems. Yeah. You did. That's why I taught these masterclasses. You need to take a deep dive into understanding your multisensory energetics and understand how we have to now redo our psychological mapping with the understanding that it was our soul that was that open. Your soul was that open. And it was trying to fit Genie in a 5-sensory human psyche bottle. That is part of the challenges of your capacity to manage your empathic system now. So what can help that are these bottom line tips. Hey, I don't have the power to hold myself in that situation. And if you still go into it, then, okay, have your triage plan. So, all right, I'm going into the family matrix. Okay, how can you take breaks out? How can you have someone to call to kind of support some kind of centering? How can you maybe just, okay, I gotta go. I've made a commitment. I'm going in, and all right, I'm going to say, well, let's use this as research. I want you to observe, neutrally observe yourself, everyone else, in a detached yet compassionate way, where you just watch what your system does, what their system does, where you start to feel yourself drained, overwhelmed, taking on other people's emotions. All right. The holidays is a great time for this. It's brilliant and sucks, but it's brilliant. So what will help you really resist falling back into these old dimensional roles with family and other people is really taking a minute to see symbolically what's going on and staying in the eyes of a technician, an empathic technician. So then I got to bring in power and powerlessness. All right, where's your power? Where isn't it? You will never, ever truly have the power to change another human being. And if you were in your mystical center, nor would you want it. Do we have power to influence people? Do we have power to help? Do we have power to aid? Do we have power to harm? Yeah, we have all that. But do we have the power to fundamentally transform or change someone? No. We can guide, we can support. And usually, here's the paradox, empath, what we do is enable them not to change. So I'm going to take a little page from the Love Rebel here. I'm going to say, okay, I want you then to also take a step back and go, okay, hold on a minute. I'm hearing Robert feels true. Don't have power to change people. I certainly act like I have that power a lot of the time. And that's because when I was a kid, I wanted my parents to change so I would feel safer or maybe survive, because they were so unsteady and chaotic and maybe abusive and, whatever it is. And I never felt safe. So the only way I know to feel safe is to try to make people, be adults or be kind or like me or not abandon me and I'm going to say, okay, but how's that working for you? Do you want to give that up so that you can claim the power you do have? Yeah. And so this is where these bottom line, hey, you know what? I'm not empowered enough yet. I want to just give you the biggest hug in that. And then this Love Rebel page that I was going to mention a minute ago, here we go. taking a step back to the mystical altitude of soul agreements, of everyone having their own journey. And that journey is not about you. It's about you and it isn't about you. It's both and. You know, our journey with our parents is about us and it isn't about us. It's about the pain they may have went through that brought them to be who they are and their patterns and their choices and how that may have traumatized you in some way. And their adaptations to their childhood experiences. It's about you in that sense because, you know, legacies pass on. And then we become the recipients of that. We become the recipients perhaps of parents that never parented themselves enough to parent us. And when we look back at the mystical altitude, we're like, gosh, they didn't parent themselves either. And here I'm expecting or expected, you know, this parent that was hobbled in how to self-parent to parent me when there was no capacity or capability. Making direct mystical peace with your capacities and capabilities is such good medicine, especially for empaths. And what I mean is, how capable is somebody, how capable are you of whatever it is you're looking at, setting a boundary, shifting a situation? And then what's the capacity for people? So when you get into your shadow dances, when you get triggered by somebody or a situation, or you trigger yourself somehow, it can be such a mystical pivot to go, wait a minute, this person that I'm feeling violated by, what is their actual capacity to do life any other way than as a vampire? What is it? And you might come up, I don't think there is one. And I would say there may be one, there may not be one, but you're on to some clarity here. And you couldn't control whether they could not be a vampire or not anyway. So let's move on. What can you control? You can start controlling and shifting whether you're a blood donor and whether you actually take care of your empathic system in the ways it really needs now. So this is really crucial bottom line stuff. When you start to admit capacity, capability, when you start to admit power and powerlessness, it cleans so much up. I mean, now you bring in some sage and, you know, whatever else you want to do. But these things are really important. Now, I'm going to take a little bit of a pivot, go into a little of the things I love from, let's say, woo-woo, that I think can be helpful and supportive. So what I want to offer you in what I'm going to say next after a drink of vanilla coffee. First of all, it's a social live. How are you all doing? I'm just going to say hi to everybody real quick. Since we're taking a little pause, any questions about anything I've said thus far? I'll give you all a minute with that while I kind of set up for the next thing before we kind of shut down. Wendy Ellsworth, thank you so much. Tony Brewer, I see you. Anastasia, what's going on? Laura, all right. I'm good, Mari Pasa, thank you. I'm doing very well. I had caught COVID, which is why you didn't hear from me for a little bit there, which was not very fun, but I'm back now and doing good. Thank you so much for asking. All right, Kathleen Carrera, how are you? I haven't seen you for so long. All right, Randall, how to recover from homophobic bullying. Ooh. I'm going to save that. I think I can save questions, actually. Okay, Randall, I'm going to come back to that. Let me just save you. And okay, cool. So I'll come back to that question. Wonderful. Okay, well, I'm going to keep going here, and then I'm going to take any questions. So if you have any questions, maybe as I kind of go through the last kind of 5-10 minutes here, we can wrap up with that. Rochelle. All right. Thank you, Rochelle. Welcome. Nice to meet you. Okay. I want to set a greater picture down here for us empaths about where we are in this time. And I think that we don't really fully, if at all, identify these things that I'm going to present next. And that's this. If I could weave this through the language of astrology a bit and frame it from this point of view that we are in a time in which culture, the world, is going into a new meta pattern of development that in astrology we call Aquarian. And in this meta pattern of development that's active, that's becoming the dominant pattern of human development and development on planet Earth, we have certain pressures that are pushing us to evolve, to grow. Now, little brief explanation about the astrological ages. They're not necessarily a situation where all that exists is the Aquarian pattern in the age of Aquarius. No. All patterns that are part of co-creation as represented through the zodiac are always here. What's more true is that we go through an axial shift in which one pattern, which for now is Pisces, from the age of Pisces, begins to sort of drop down in its prominence and dominance, if you will, while another begins to move up, which is Aquarius. So it's not that once we are full into the age of Aquarius that, I don't know, Aries energy won't be here, or Taurus or Virgo. No, they're all here. Rather, it's that Aquarius becomes a meta pattern. And in this meta pattern, the primary pressure is that we as human beings evolve into one world consciousness, which is this. It is realizing consciously that we breathe the same atmosphere. My dear empaths, we feel together. We breathe together. We are born together. We die together. We journey through dark nights together. There's a sense of, I am a we. We are an us. And there's still an I. We are still individuating. We are still individuals. But under the Aquarian pressure of evolution, we're meant to evolve into individuals that also carry a consciousness of both and. I am both an individual and I'm a we. Both and. And in that, if we really come into one world consciousness, which is not, let me be clear for the conspiracy theorists out there, this is not about a new world order or any of that. This is about an awareness of how we interrelate, interaffect each other. It's mystical law. All is one. And at the level in which it is embodied is Earth, such that we now know that one major economy or country, if they pollute the environment, they pollute the environment for everybody. If you billow up all that into the atmosphere, well, we all are going to breathe it. If one country detonates a nuclear weapon, the nuclear fallout goes around the world because there's no boundaries really. It's one world. And it's not that we weren't one world, 3,000 years ago we were, but we didn't know it. Now we do. That's the Aquarian metric difference. Now, as empaths in this, we are here in part as light workers. And let me be clear what a light worker is. A light worker is someone that goes to where it's dark to bring light. Otherwise, what are you doing? Now, I'm all down for us all getting together at the light spa and zhuzhing up our light. Hell yeah. But we each as light workers are sent into areas of darkness to bring light. That's what light workers do. So light workers really are shadow workers, both and. Having said that, on a soul level, your soul agreements have positioned you in this era and age to bring light to things that are unconscious or just flat out dark. And somehow, what is light like going on? That could be its own social life. Love, ultimately, it's love. And I'm not talking human jealousy, this thing, that thing, control you, I love you, Hollywood. I'm talking about a mystical level of love that we can barely language. That's why we have Rumi. That's why we have poets and musicians in music, because that's the only way we can approximate even talking about that level of love. So in this new era, where are we? And you got to track with me and your empathic system in what I say next. The internet age is here. And in the internet age, what has evolved the last 20 years-ish is we have been given a new psychic nervous system. What do I mean by that, my dear empath? And you best listen up. What I mean by that is everyone, especially those of us who are empaths, HSPs, empathic souls, intuitive, psychic, we now carry multiple points of access to our field that are getting fed energetics daily. And a lot of it is very unconscious. So what birthed this? The internet. I can get on here and things can access my empathic system far more than ever before. Whether that's something as simple as a TikTok reel, or whether that's something as complex as some misinformation spreading around through Twitter, or as dark as a hateful tweet that's being issued and then retweeted and retweeted and retweeted. That's how accessible you are now. I am. All of us are. We are. Our empathic system is so accessible now. It is literally mind-blowing, meaning you mentally can't even comprehend. But you've already been experiencing it. So when you wonder why you're overwhelmed, exhausted, stressed out, and it does feel like everyone's vibe is kind of sticking on you or funking you up, you're not making that up. But there needs to be a new psychic hygiene now, and a new understanding that even something as simple as, like I said, a reel or a post has an energetic implication on you now. And to be aware of what that is and mindful is the new psychic hygiene. And to manage it is the new light hygiene. So when I said earlier, you may be feeling during the holidays here really funked up. Well, think of all the bombardment you're getting from all sorts of things that come from something as small as that. And now begin to sense its impact. You have a psychic nervous system now that's connected to the World Wide Web. And everything that you focus on there focuses right back into you. Such that I would really advise, maybe you want to pay attention to what you're doing when it comes to something as simple as watching a reel. Maybe that reel, at the very least, is stealing your time. Does it have value? Does it add some sort of usefulness or nourishment? It might be something fun to watch and make you laugh. Wonderful. And it might not. It might just be you unconsciously zoning out. And let me be clear. What happens when we're on the internet and we zone out? We have no boundary. psychic forces can access you and your psyche, and you have no boundary when you're mindlessly scrolling, watching video after video on YouTube, whatever it is. Now, positively, we can be nourished by this same psychic nervous system as well. Yeah, I hope this is nourishing for you. Here we are. We're here because of the internet. I'm able to do this because of the internet. Both and. But as empaths, there needs to be a brand new understanding of what light hygiene is, what light practices are, and they're not optional. They are not optional. If you make them optional, well, you probably already feel what that feels like. When you wake up and you're feeling anxious and you don't have anything in your life that really warrants that level of anxiety or that level of concern or worry, I'm going to point you to what you've been reading, what you've been seeing, what's been getting into your field. Now, this is not a call necessarily, it is a little bit, to not watching the news or not staying informed. You want to know whether you're being informed or infected, informed or contaminated. And that takes a very discerning and mystical backbone and an understanding that everyone on the internet wants your attention. So they are engineering in think tanks in copywriting how to best trigger your system to pay attention to them. So let's create this headline engineered to scare people. And this goes everywhere. This is not just unique to one news media channel, right or left. This is all of them for the most part. There are a few that I would say they come pretty clean. They just want to inform you, get you to get into your heart, feel and think for yourself, and not from triggering of being afraid or whatever else everyone's up to. This requires a real awareness around where your focus goes, because where your focus and intention go, so does your spirit. And where your focus and intention go, consciously or unconsciously, is going to have a lot to do with the kind of psychic hygiene and boundaries you have. So one of the benefits of the holidays being kind of like this empath classroom is you can really begin to inventory, hey, what am I allowing into my psyche? And if you were to say to me, oh, well, Robert, I don't watch the news and I have my notifications turned off. I'm going to go, okay. And let me just call a little bullshit there, because guess what? You're an empath. You are a multisensory bandwidth having being. You pick up on stuff that you're not even aware of on the daily. And I'll tell you what, just because you aren't watching the news doesn't mean you still are not receiving the empathic news, because everything that's happening in the world is in the psychic field and on the psychic airwaves. And you're going to pick it up because you're an empath. You're going to, okay, shut your notifications off. Great. But you know what? You're still getting your empathic notifications. So even these steps, perhaps, that might be useful, might not. Once again, I think you should stay informed. Might not really produce the centeredness you're looking for. I would pick up on stuff before it would happen, well before there was an internet like there is today. And now that there is an internet like there is today, I, just like you, have had a lot of growing pains and rough and tumble, crash and burn lessons to learn when it comes to how I manage my empathic system in an internet age where we share a psychic nervous system together, and that gives us access to each other and others access to us in ways we've never experienced in human history, ever. Take that in. And then get real serious and bottom line yourself around, what do you need to start cleaning up? Your empathic system might be fried because there is too much of a bombardment of energy coming at you that you, just like welcoming in a vampire, have welcomed in through your phone, through your tablet, through your computer, through your news media. And I think I have to say, this has been a work in progress for me as well. I've gotten some good traction in this. And now when I look at news headlines or copy and articles and stuff, I get infuriated because I understand exactly what they're trying to do, which is get people to, from the headline, have to click on it and then find out whatever. And here's some metrics for you around what might inform versus infect you, what might be something you need to know versus not know. All right. Because it can be hard to discern this. And sometimes it's both end. They have a nasty engineered headline, but it's good information to know. Ask yourself if there is any usefulness in information triggering you into toxic fear. There is healthy fear. How about the healthy fear around climate change? We should probably be afraid of what's going down here in a healthy way because, I don't know, no one's traveling for the holidays in my country because there's an Arctic blast coming that's so severe that's covered 3/4 of the country. No one can go anywhere. This doesn't happen. Texas is maybe bracing for its next snowmageddon. We're in a different time. And yet, then we find ourselves perhaps paying attention to the stuff that really doesn't inform, but infects or just gets us to check out. You're not here as a light worker to check out. Now, you're not here to suffer either. I'm not making this claim that you're here to suffer and, go to the dark and suffer. Not true either. I'm saying, as empaths, we are at a time where we have to manage things from a very different center, a different understanding. I've offered many tonight. There's tons more in my masterclasses. But at the very least, you've got to understand the psychic nervous system that is the internet. You're plugged into it. And even if you got off that grid, as an empath, you'd still be feeling things. So, things to consider here. How do you, as an empath, manage your boundary system? In an internet age, in regards to all the family stuff I've covered through archetypes and shadow dancing, and through the holidays. How do you do that? This year, because we're in a Mercury retrograde setup phase and Mercury retrograde soon, we are called a little deeper than usual, I feel, to really get a handle on a lot of the ways our systems roll here. I want to tell you from my heart that most of my clients over the 15 years when I did professional intuitive work were empathic souls. I consider myself to be one. And we are some of the most badass love rebels, mystical lovers, healers, light workers on the planet. Your empathic prowess is just that. It's a prowess. It is a power. Until you mature to a certain way of working with it, it can feel like it's striking you down, making it harder to move in life and messing you up. But you were born to mature to a different way to be with it, to where it is your greatest ally, asset, and capacity for connection. Most notably, self-connection. You're likely not going to find that kind of instruction, how to be with your empathic system in a connecting way, in an empowering way, in empathic information for empaths that's based in the victim side of the phenomena of how you're wired. If you're looking for a real way to get in your body, get your feet on the ground, and really get to the light work that you signed up for. It's not going to be found in acting as if you're a victim because you're too sensitive. I'm just speaking as a technician. I'm not making anyone wrong. I will guide you to be wary of any teachings that do that make it precious, or, there's something to be said about needing to just sometimes get to your own vibration and be alone. And I am a huge fan, like I said, salt baths, sign me up. Incense, sign me up. I've got so many light tools, it's crazy, and I love them all. But there's a core territory of managing your empathic system that supersedes those things. Those are adjunct light tools that can be useful and helpful in conjunction with the deep interior shifting I've somewhat touched on in this social life. The holidays always give us such, for better or for worse, an opportunity to see, whoa. What I'm saying now is how I usually manage my system. This is just times 10 because there's so much going on with family dynamics, with busyness, with pressure, with, all the things we're expected to do during the holidays. And I think what I'm trying to empower you to do is become your own authority, but catch your backside too. Becoming our own authority does not make us beyond reproach when it comes to shadow work or looking at our own shadow side. It, in fact, includes that. Like, you got to call out and name in loving ways as a technician how you're messing yourself up, or how you're just not managing your empathic system in ways that are nourishing. There are ways to do it that are nourishing and amazing, that'll get you so intuitively clear. So I've given you probably a lot to think about. Let's see if you got any questions. But I want you to keep in mind, this new internet age is massive and must be calculated in here to understanding why many of us as empaths end up feeling so shitty. And you didn't even think it was from you being on TikTok, or you being on Twitter, or you being on Facebook, perhaps, or the news you just watched. Yeah, it's challenging. But the exciting thing is we're getting traction now, I think. I really feel that. As empaths, we're getting traction. Like, okay, I need to be informed. I want to know, because my calling is to serve the world and light it up somehow in some way I've agreed to. So I need to know where the dark I'm called to go light up is. You can't do that with your head in the sand or hiding away in a cabin necessarily. You got to engage this life, but you can do it in a way that's conscious, tactical, almost, and strategized and empowered. Empowered empaths, come on. All right. So I'm going to start starring some questions here. And I know I got one in the queue here from before. Snowmageddon. Good luck, Texas. I'm sending you lots of love. I've got an aunt down there. Okay, let's see. Okay, I'm going to take this one. So I'm going to get to quite a few questions here. I'm going to give some shorter answers. But Donna asks, what are a couple psychic light hygiene practices we can use over the holidays? Okay. Well, let me give you a few from my own toolkit. I am a big fan of candles. I've got one burning right there. You can draw energy from candles into your system as almost a light source, truly. So don't burn your house down, but I'm a fan of intentional candle lighting, prayer, soul prayer, and system scanning, slowing down and feeling your field. And that requires, as empaths, an emotional scan, meaning we have to get into our emotional system and go, okay, what am I feeling? Part one. Where's this coming from? Part two. Might not be yours. If it's not yours, I want you then to ask for light to come and lift it off you. It's called the soul prayer. Hey, I'm feeling this anxiety. I'm feeling this fear. I'm feeling this energetic. And how do I know it's not mine? Well, there's nothing in my life where this matches. I don't know why I'd be anxious. Things are generally stable. If you can identify something in your life where it matches, well, okay, now we got to sit with that and go, okay, this is my emotion. It could be both and. It could be my emotion and others kind of glomming onto my emotion and amping me up from level 5 to level 10. When I first started doing intuitive readings, I would realize after maybe the first few years of full time that I would have an issue, let's say abandonment fear, trust issue or something. And then I would work with a client that had the same issue. And let's say I'm at a level 3, but that client was level 10. By the time I was done with that session, I was at level 8. They would level me up before I knew how to handle this to a higher level than my own system's baseline. And I pick something where you have some emotional vulnerability, wounding, something going on in your system, something in your light body that's a bit fractured. And then others, if you're around others or you're reading it or you're whatever it is, that it's possible that that can actually amp up from your baseline higher for you. So part of differentiation here as a light practice is to go, okay, I need to differentiate what's mine, what isn't, what's both and. And okay, if it's both and, has this leveled me up? And then I'm going to ask you to reflect on how'd you level down to where the baseline is now? What would you do? Therapy? Was it some sort of, is it your yoga practice? What is it that gets you down to a baseline around certain things in your system emotionally? Well, we could start with that. But you can always, always pray. You can say to your higher beings, guides, spirit, angels, whatever your spirituality is, you can say to that, hey, listen, I'm having trouble discerning whether this is mine or not. Help me see that. Help me feel that. Boom, done. Okay, now I'm trying to figure out, you're saying it's both and. Okay, what level has this leveled me up to? I feel like I'm about at a 9. Normally I'm a 6. And you feel, yep, that's true. Okay, let's level you down. Go for a walk. Get out in nature. Do some sort of ritual, like with candle, within something where you're willing to release it and give it to the light. Give it to the light. Your system doesn't have the power to shift it anyway. Now, sometimes we feel stuff that way because there's a calling in there for us to go help other people. But we have to be strong enough to go help them and not get leveled up. To where now we are in the archetypal management system that they're in, or that we've been in historically, that was sabotaging for us to manage that level. It never really truly tends to occur to people that you may be in your addict because you're managing the emotions of others. And maybe yours, but maybe not. When your food addict's online, are you managing your feelings or your spouse's? Or the feelings of the people you just saw that had a mass shooting and lost their kids? And you feel that now. Of course you do. You're an empath. Now, that could, for example, recruit your heart to want to do something about gun laws. And then you soul pray, give light to the situation, but also ask for release from the burden of that and let it guide you to do something proactive as a light worker for society. Okay, great. But now track the shadow side here. If you unconsciously or consciously love on some level being so sensitive and love that it's so overwhelming to you, you can't take any other steps forward in your life, and this is what you know, and some part of you wants to keep things the same, well, you know, you might unconsciously be inviting in emotional overwhelm or the emotions of other people so that you don't have to change your life, step into your power, grow up, move on. And that's okay. You're not a bad person. You're human. And yet, you know, the karma's going to continue to pile up here. And you're going to feel your addict or whatever else manage this more and more and more. And it's just self-sabotage. So there's so many, see what I mean? There's so many places to go in here. So there's some light practices there. And yeah, I'll leave it there. I hope that was helpful because I could go on and on literally for all of that. Okay. Yeah, who does this belong to? Is it mine? Yeah, let me go back to some of these starred questions real quick. So Randall asked this one earlier, how to recover from homophobic bullying. Well, as someone who has recovered from that, how I recovered was by understanding what the bully is managing for somebody who bullies people. And there's a two-pronged approach I'm going to offer, Randall. One is to say that understanding a bully isn't to enable them. It's to understand where they feel powerless so you can identify where you have power. Now, if bullying, gay bullying, homophobic bullying happened at a time when you couldn't protect yourself, it did for me when I was in grade school, and then you physically are assaulted or injured, that's going to code in, and in a deeper way, perhaps even than just slurs and name calling. But the medicine is always going to be about coming to understand at a mystical level that you were such a bright light that you illumined someone's shadow. And that illumination made them see that they don't love themselves and they're not comfortable in their own interior with who they are. So then they scapegoated you, me, with an attempt to put us down for who we are in this life. People who really love themselves and feel, if you will, the Christos consciousness, the love of Christ in them, would never put someone down that way. So that helped me get perspective and mystical traction, but it also helped me pull in a love rebel, such that I've had in my life other bullies since I was too young to maybe fight for myself physically. And anytime the bully comes around in my life now, I'm out. We're done. I do not shadow dance with bullies. I just don't. So whether it's a business relationship where this has played out a lot in my life as an adult, or whether it's anything else, I put out an energy that tells you we will be done. As soon as you pull a bully on me, we are so done. You will be blocked on social media. I don't even have there's no conversation here. We're just done. So finding in yourself, Randall, at this time in your life, the need to be the warrior on behalf of yourself that gay kid needs, that's where you can recover. Now, fighting the good fight as a warrior is going to look different situation to situation. I can't be too formulaic here. Sometimes it's walking away. Sometimes it's pulling out a sword. And sometimes it's saying something back to somebody in a way, not as a shadow dance engagement, but as an Aikido move that just brings it back to them. So let me give you an example of that. If someone was bullying me for being gay or bullying me, period, I would go archetypal and I'd say, you're trying to bully me right now. Are you that disempowered? Why are you trying to bully me? Do you feel that disempowered that you got to take power from me to feel empowered? Is that why you're bullying me? As soon as you go for the shadow jugular, meaning the truth of the pattern and what it manages for them, they're going to leave you the F alone because they're not going to go near that most of the time. And even if they have some comeback, their comeback is only to help them scoot out of there as soon as they can because you just saw them for what's really happening. Recovering from bullying is found to some degree in knowing, hey, I can take care of bullies now. And sometimes, I was driving around once. I was in downtown Minneapolis. The gays bars had closed and I was with my friends. And we got accosted by 2 cars full of men that pulled up on each side of us while we were at my friend's car. And they're going to probably kill us. So we got in my friend's car and we drove through downtown Minneapolis while they chased us for quite some time. Sometimes you got to get out of there. That's my point. Here's what I want to empower you with. Recovery from bullying is found in understanding at a mystical level why people bully, why you were maybe a target. Obviously, homophobic bullying is very specific. People who are okay with their own sexuality tend not to have problems with other people's sexuality. So there's reasons why people may not be okay with their sexuality. I don't know, the church indoctrination, or they maybe have homosexual feelings and they don't know how to deal with that. And it doesn't even mean they're gay. They just, hey, I don't know, once in a while I like a dude. I don't know. But, it is found in knowing that at a soul level, what's happening and why. And it has nothing to do, and never has, with your worthiness or their worthiness, really. So pivoting around in that can be helpful. But man, it's going to run the gamut from get the hell out of there to maybe do some shadow dance language to where you kind of shut it down to not saying anything. Here's what I will offer. You'll always know, because your own gut and system and heart is going to tell you whether it's the fight, the good fight, or walk away, or you'll just know. And you'll know because no matter which choice you make, you won't disconnect from you. You're not here for every battle or every bully. You'll just know, no, this isn't my battle. Oh, poor thing. Probably has some crush on his best friend. So anyway, so back to empath questions, but thank you. I will take that just because it's very close and near and dear to my heart. All right. Yes. Okay. Well, I'm going to, it's been a long one. I'm going to, there's one more started one. Let me see what that was. All right. So I'm going to take this final question. Vicky, do you feel more people are tuned into their empathic energy and don't understand that connection? I'm not so sure the language, Vicky, for me is a bit technically off, just for me. I'm not so sure we tune into our empathic energy. I think we have empathic senses that we get sensory information from. And in fact, with empathic senses, it's multi-sensory information, meaning we have, touch, taste, sound, smell, all these, all these apparati of the 5 sensory thing we're in, called the human body. And then beyond that, we go to other senses. And that spectrum typically starts in the emotional system. So we start to go to the emotional system spectrum of senses. And that's where we feel situations. We feel people, right? It's not that we tune in as empaths. It's rather, that's just online because it's our wiring. It's our empathic soul's nature. So it's more rather, what I would offer, Vicky, is can we have a healthier relationship with those senses and also regulate them in a way that allows us to be boundaried, but also engaged, both and. To sense and discern, that's my emotion, that isn't. That's both and now I'm at level 9. There's sort of a skill in this, but the skill really isn't, to some degree, whether you are acutely capable or able to feel in a multisensory and sense in a multisensory way. That's already there. The skill is rather, how do I understand that system skillfully? How do I work with it skillfully in a way where I am self-connected in the center of my power and also able to move with those senses in a way that doesn't collapse me, in fact, nourishes me, guides me. I'm not a victim of being highly sensitive. I may be a victim of not working with that skillfully, but this is actually something that's part of my own nature. I just need to understand how to be with it in an empowered and nourishing way. And what I'm saying is that to do that, you have to kind of reinvent the wheel on psychology itself. The psychology we know is 5 sensory survival-based psychology, stats and rats. I have an undergrad in it. I know exactly what it is. Why I did not go further in academia is because I knew that it would never take me to where I was going to go. My intuitive work did. I'm grateful for my clinical background, but I'm also very mindful and very psychologically oriented. I'm a technician. The psyche, the psyche and the empathic system are connected in us as empaths. But to cut from psychology and just go to the woo doesn't really work out too well. But to stay in 5 sensory psychology doesn't either. We got to do both. And that's what those master classes do. So once again, check out this link. Go check out this class. It's actually 2 of them, 2 for 1. We only open this once a year. And there's only like a week left because we're almost to the new year. So if it speaks to you, great. I hope you get in. You can also alternatively just take 1.0 at 40% off. Like I said, if you take both, you get basically 2 for 1. I know we're all on budgets, etc. So feel it out for yourself and see how that rolls. So I will, hopefully, I hate to say promise anything because that's been the kind of year I've had, but I have the intention of doing 1 more social live before the end of the year. And it's going to be about healing the light body. So it's going to be a continuation a bit of this particular subject matter. So I hope you join me there. But in the meantime, if I don't see you then, have a wonderful holiday season. I hope this helped you kind of get some mooring in your empathic senses, your empathic system. And there's more to be had in the master classes if you're able to do that. And I hope you do. But otherwise, I'll see you in about a week or so for the next social live. It'll be earlier in the week because now we're going to the weekends are the holiday. So I think I'm going to probably shoot for next Tuesday, FYI, if you're wondering when. Best way to stay in touch on that is stay on my newsletter, or if you're on Facebook or YouTube, ring the bell on YouTube and subscribe to updates so you're notified every time there's a new video, whatever it might be. And if you wouldn't mind, make sure you smash that like button for this video as a way to honor the law of reciprocity for the time I've spent here, hopefully helping you. All right. Have a great holiday. And I will see you right after. For those of you who celebrate Christmas, I'll see you right after Christmas. Namaste.